You are sitting still. Nothing is demanding your attention. No task, no alarm, no notification. Just you and a quiet room, and a few empty minutes stretching out in front of you. And something immediately feels wrong. Not painful, not dangerous, just deeply, inexplicably wrong. Like your brain has issued a low-level alarm that says, "This is not how things are supposed to be." That feeling has a name, and the science behind it will change how you think about every idle moment you have ever tried to escape. In 2014, a psychologist at the University of Virginia named Timothy Wilson ran a series of experiments that stunned the scientific community. He asked participants to sit alone in a plain room for 6 to 15 minutes with nothing to do. No phone, no book, no music, just their own thoughts. When he asked how they felt afterward, most described the experience as deeply unpleasant. Some called it unbearable. Then Wilson introduced an option. In the corner of the room, there was a device that would deliver a mild electric shock. Participants had already experienced the shock and rated it as painful. They had said they would pay money to avoid it. And yet, when left alone with their thoughts, 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves rather than sit quietly. 67% chose pain over stillness. That is not a quirk. That is a signal about something very deep inside you. Your brain did not evolve to rest. It evolved to scan, to notice, to act. For the vast majority of human history, doing nothing was not a luxury. It was a death sentence. The ancestor who sat quietly while the grass moved nearby did not pass on their genes. The one whose mind immediately snapped to attention, generated worst-case scenarios, and prepared to move, that is the one who survived. You are descended from the anxious ones, the restless ones, the ones who could not stop thinking. Boredom, as the neuroscientist James Dankert at the University of Waterloo has studied extensively, is not simply the absence of stimulation. It is an active neurological state. Your brain does not go quiet when there is nothing to do. It activates a system called the default mode network, a cluster of brain regions that lights up precisely when you are not focused on an external task. This network runs simulations, replays memories, projects futures, constructs social scenarios, worries, plans, imagines. Your brain has no off switch. When you feel bored, what you are actually experiencing is a mismatch. Your mind is generating energy with nowhere to direct it. Dankert describes it as the sensation of wanting to engage, but being unable to find a way to engage meaningfully. It is the cognitive equivalent of an engine revving in neutral. All that power, no traction, and your nervous system registers that mismatch as distress. This is why boredom feels like more than mild inconvenience. In studies conducted by researcher Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire, chronic boredom was linked to increased risk of depression, anxiety, substance use, and physical health problems. People who experience frequent boredom are more likely to make impulsive decisions, seek out high-risk behaviors, and report lower levels of life satisfaction. Boredom is not trivial. It is a significant driver of human behavior. But here is where it gets strange. The same restlessness that makes stillness unbearable is also the engine behind almost everything remarkable your species has ever built. Boredom is not just a problem. It is a pressure system. And pressure, directed well, creates. Think about what happens in the moments between tasks. The shower, the walk to the car, the few minutes before sleep. Research published in the journal Psychological Science found that participants who completed a boring task first, like copying numbers from a phone book, generated significantly more creative ideas afterward compared to those who did not experience boredom. The default mode network, that restless scanning system your brain activates when it has nothing external to grab, is also the network most associated with creative insight, novel association, and imaginative thinking. Your boredom is your creativity waiting for a target. The ancient human sitting by the fire with nothing to hunt, nothing immediate to solve, Was the one who first stared at a shadow on a cave wall and thought, "What if I put that shape there on purpose?" The one whose restless mind could not stop generating, could not stop asking what if, was the one who invented tools, stories, rituals, art. Boredom is the mother of culture, but your world has done something to that system that no other period in human history has ever done. It has eliminated the gap. For most of human existence, boredom was unavoidable. You had to sit with it. You had to let the pressure build. There were no alternative inputs to grab. There was no escape hatch. That enforced stillness, as uncomfortable as it was, served a function. The mind would spin for a while, generate restless energy, and then, because there was nowhere else to go, it would eventually do something with that energy. It would imagine. It would problem solve. It would rest, in the truest sense of the word. Now you carry a device in your pocket that is specifically engineered to intercept that discomfort the moment it appears. The notification arrives before the boredom can fully form. The scroll begins before the restlessness can accumulate into something useful. You never have to sit with the feeling, and so the pressure never builds, and so the creative discharge never comes, and so you reach the end of another day feeling vaguely unsatisfied, but not quite knowing why. Because you never got bored enough. Researcher Aaron Westgate at the University of Florida has spent years studying what happens when people are forced to choose between uncomfortable thoughts and external distraction. Her work shows that it is not the absence of external stimulation that makes boredom painful. It is the perceived inability to control what your mind does with the silence. When people feel they can direct their own thoughts productively, quiet time feels restorative. When they feel their mind will wander into negative territory, they will reach for any distraction available, no matter how meaningless. You do not fear silence. You fear what lives in the silence. And what lives there, most of the time, is unfinished thinking, half-formed plans, questions you have been avoiding, feelings you filed away under things to deal with later. The restless brain, when given no external task, naturally gravitates toward whatever remains unresolved. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, named after the Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who discovered in the 1920s that the human mind remembers interrupted tasks far better than completed ones. Your brain keeps a running list, and when you go quiet, it starts reading that list back to you. That is uncomfortable, but it is not a malfunction. It is your mind trying to finish what it started. It is the same system that kept your ancestor alive by refusing to let a half-solved problem rest. The predator is somewhere. The food cache is somewhere. The child has not returned yet. Your brain would not let it go, and it still will not let it go. The problem is not that your mind does this. The problem is that you now have an infinite supply of ways to prevent it from doing its job. Every time you reach for your phone to fill a gap, you are feeding the restlessness without resolving it. The stimulation satisfies the surface craving, but does nothing for the underlying pressure. The unfinished thinking does not get done. The creative discharge does not come. The Zeigarnik list does not get shorter. And the next time you encounter silence, the discomfort is a little more intense, and the reflex to escape it a little more automatic. This is the boredom trap, and most of modern life is designed around it. So what do you do with this? The research from Dankert, Westgate, and Mann all points toward the same counterintuitive answer. The solution is not to avoid boredom. It is to get better at sitting inside it. To recognize the discomfort not as a problem to eliminate, but as a signal to follow. When that low-level alarm goes off and something feels wrong about the quiet, that is the moment to ask, what is my mind actually trying to do right now? Sometimes it is trying to worry. Let it. Acknowledge the worry, give it a name, and it loses some of its grip. Sometimes it is trying to create. Give it space. The idea that is trying to form needs the gap to form in. Sometimes it is genuinely trying to rest. Not the passive consumption kind of rest, not scrolling or watching, but the actual neural recovery that only happens when you stop feeding the system inputs and let it process at its own pace. The ancestors who survived were restless, but they also had no choice but to sit with the fire and let the restlessness run its course. They did not have an escape hatch. And in not escaping, they did something your distracted, overstimulated mind rarely gets to do. They finished thinking. So the next time you are sitting still and something immediately feels wrong, stay there for one more minute. Let the discomfort sharpen. Let the brain revolt. Feel it looking for something to grab. Because what it is really doing is exactly what it was built to do. It is trying to keep you alive. It is trying to solve what is unsolved. It is trying to create what has never existed. You are sitting still. Nothing is demanding your attention. No task, no alarm, no notification. And if you let yourself stay there just a little longer, something is about to happen.